We met in Minneapolis, Minnesota at a school we were going to up there. And at that time, back at that time period, you know, the school said, we guarantee you a job. It was like just a little career. It was called an airline and business school. So we both met there, and they guaranteed you a job. So we thought, oh, that sounds good. They actually had the civil service testers come in and test the people for civil service jobs and set you up with jobs in Washington, D.C. And so that's how we got our first civil service test job. Well, we became engaged in Washington, and we heard about this agency that was going to be moving to Battle Creek, Michigan. So we looked on the map, and we thought, well, that's kind of centrally located between my hometown and his hometown. I was from the eastern part of the state, and he was from northern Indiana. So we sent in our applications. Heard nothing for a few months. While we were in Washington, we sent them in. And we got married, living in Indiana, and he was working in Mishawaka for the government. And we got a call in December to come up for an interview. So we both came up and they hired us. And so we moved here and started work February 4th, 1963. My first job here in this building in Battle Creek, I started February 4th, 1963. I came in as a GS3 clerk typist, but I was a key punch operator. So I worked down in the computer area, which was a basement area that was all remodeled for the computers. The mainframe at that time was the IBM 1401. And we had a room full of electronic accounting machines, EAM machines, that would sort the punched cards and segregate them, and you'd work through those, and after we key punched them.
Well, we occupied the tower building, and this building was occupied by the 6th Army Corps and the Office of Civil Defense Management, and they had a staff college here. But we primarily were in the tower, Building 1. And we had several directorates. I don't recall how many, but they occupied various floors. So we were on 2 through 6, and then I think, what else would we have?
Realization. And we would go down in the tunnels at lunchtime. We'd pack our lunches, my girlfriends and myself, and we would explore the building just to see what they were being used. And it was so interesting. We'd walk up some of those back staircases from the basement on up into the fingers, and there were still signs on the walls of no smoking in bed by order of the commander. It was left from when it was Percy Jones Army Hospital. So it was all very, very interesting. And there used to be tunnels that would go over to the Battle Creek Field House and over to the Hart Hotel.
It was hot in the summer and cold in the winter. To get any cooling, you open the window and all the papers would blow all over. But that was your source of getting some refreshment. But, and then when they finally did, well, GSA monitored all of that, especially the heat. So the rooms, some of them would get really cold. So some of us would get some initiative and pack ice cubes around the thermostat and maybe get a little extra heat. And finally, GSA enclosed the thermostat so you couldn't do that.
Well, when we first moved here, it was a new organization, and it was largely a male-populated organization. And in fact, they had even a women's auxiliary that the women could join that were working to be with the wives of all the managers and stuff. And there was a lot more camaraderie, being it was a new agency, people coming from all over. So you were a lot more friendly. You had parties together. You'd have dances. You would have hail and farewell parties to welcome new employees and to say goodbye to some. We had Christmas dances. You know, it was just Christmas parties for the children. It was just a different culture at that time. But you accepted it and you went on. I was a secretary and a clerk typist and a secretary in that organization then. And yes, you dressed appropriately, professionally, I'd put it. You'd wear dresses or suits. And then I became their first computer technician and worked in the programming area. And yeah, you still dressed professionally all the time.
We started out with the manual DD-146's 5x8 description cards of the items that had been being cataloged. And we progressed from that to a gradual progression of trying to mechanize those and put them in the computer. But it was different phases eventually to eliminate the hard copy, and it took many years. All that information was transferred and coded so it could be put on the computer to save storage space, which was a premium then, not like it is so much today. And it was, the 5x8 cards were, they contained the item name of the item that was being cataloged, the physical descriptions of, performance characteristics, physical characteristics, and all that was on those cards. And they were manually sorted, and what the idea was to eliminate duplication from the services, buying from different manufacturers when they could get it all from one place. And occasionally somebody would try to do that. They had a preferred manufacturer or something. So we would physically screen all those characteristics manually and look for duplications. And eventually that all was done after it was, all that information was put onto the computer. Then the computer would match all those characteristics, look for duplications. So, and they would return them before they assigned a stock number.
Once I started with DRMS, or DPDS, Defense Property Disposal Service, I saw the first computer come to our directorate. It was a Texas Instrument, and we had one computer, one little personal computer sitting on a desk that no one would touch. And so I sat down and I taught myself how to use it. And I tried to develop a program that I could use in my work that I was doing. I was at that time in foreign military sales. And I had quite a few years in foreign military sales and advanced in my career there. And was able to use the computer. And then I remember when everyone got their personal computers on their desk. And, you know, you had to practice just dropping and dragging and dropping and, you know, everything that went with it. But it was just to have word processing was so wonderful compared to coming up as a clerk typist. And all the carbons and the copies you had to use. And then I went was a property disposal specialist and was assigned to the operations branch at that time. And I did all the budgeting work for them, from getting all the field requirements in, what they needed, putting the whole budget together, and submitting the budget for each year. So that was very interesting. And then about that same time, I ran for a position in the union here also. And I was the vice president for DRMS. And I created the first labor management partnership in a DLA agency. And we had a wonderful working partnership going with DRMS and the union. I was sitting in with all the staff meetings and everything. Then, there was all these different programs I worked on prior to that, but and the philosophy of the agency changed over this time too. We were always told that we're a service organization. We're not in business to be in business. And then, as the commanders changed, we did get one commander that changed that philosophy. He realized that DRMS was one of 3 organizations in the government that could bring money back into the U.S. Treasury. There's the IRS service, there's GSA, and DRMS was. And so the concept or the philosophy changed to we are in business to be in business. So we were really looking at proceeds we could bring into this organization. That's when the recyclable materials program took off so big, the precious metals program, recovery of the precious metals, the sale of all the recyclable materials. Our sales programs took off was quite emphasized. Reutilization, foreign military sales never faded at all. That was kept too, but the emphasis was put on bringing proceeds into the organization. And then came the idea to contract out. Beforehand, it was called A76 studies. And I was on a team there. We did all the A76 studies. Every job description had to be in such detail where someone else could pick it up and do that job. But the difference there is you had to also create a contingency plan. In case a contract faded, it could go back government with this contingency plan. I don't know whatever happened to A76. It kind of went by the wayside. But when our philosophy changed here, we went into what they called enterprise management. And that was part of the DLA, a reorganization part or a contracting out phase of DLA for the agencies. I was a member of the board of directors for Battle Creek Unlimited, which is the economic arm of Battle Creek. And it brought everything together. We worked and we fought the BRAC, and we won. We were able to keep, the Federal Center came off the list with a lot of effort. But it worked so well with this partnership going on that we had, the labor management partnership. But then, after that, then DLA came out with their idea to contract out stuff. So I worked with that somewhat with the commander to try to keep some organizations, some things in-house rather than trying to contract them out. But then I had an opportunity. I saw this job posted for Europe. And so I put in on it, and I was accepted. And he was able to retire, and I had about 3.5, 4 years to go before I could retire. So he retired, and I took him as my dependent, and off we went to Europe for 3 years at DRMS International. And at that time, DRMS International covered both the Pacific and the European region. And so the communications team, I let go. I let go of my union position too, and went off and forgot all that. So I wasn't up to date with what was happening here anymore that much. But had a wonderful career in DRMS, international and here. And the communications team won numerous awards. We won the Scissors Award. We won a Special Act Award from DLA. And we won, all the members got Employees of the Year awards. So we did a good job.
Advancement potential. like I say, it started as a supply clerk with a new agency, and I got to grow with the agency. I went from seemed like I went from a 4 to a 5 to a 7 to a 9, 11, 12, 13. And those lower grades, I probably won a year. And then I leveled off at a 12 for quite a while, and then a 13 for quite a while, probably 10 years each. But it gave me an opportunity to grow. I did apply for a cataloging chief's job in Richmond, Virginia, and I went there for an interview, but they hired a gentleman from Philadelphia to take the job.
Another thing that was so fantastic in this organization, you could sit here at headquarters, make a policy change, and go out in the field and see it happening. You could see the results of that policy change, if it was a good policy or not. So that was just fantastic that way. You could see results of your work.